Welcome to another episode of the Fanzone podcast, your home for all things Bolton Wanderers, up the Trotters, the Northwest's #1 podcast.
Good evening, ladies and gents. Welcome back to another episode of The Preview, brought to you by us here at the Fanzone podcast. Joined tonight by myself, Ben, and Chris, of course, the regulars, so to speak. But we've got a special guest on this evening. We're joined by Paul from Orient Outlook. How are you doing, Paul?
Good, thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Nice to meet you.
No, you're very welcome. Thanks for joining us. Yeah. If you're looking forward to this evening's episodes, get your comments in the chat. And if you want to get your thoughts about the game coming up, what we're talking about, drop them in the chat and we'll pick some out and see if we can get some stuff brought into the stream. But without further ado, we will get stuck into this evening's episode of the preview. So, of course, the Wanderers will host Leyton Orient at home on Saturday. It's a game that, I mean, from our point of view, at least as Wanderers fans, needs to be a positive one. We're going to be looking for a reaction. And I'm sure that might actually fill you Leyton Orient fans with some optimism, perhaps, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that we've not been in great form ourselves, you're going to be a difficult game. You're one of those clubs that you would expect to have a top 8 budget and to be in the top 7 or 8, well, top 6 or 7 probably by come the end of the season. I know you're not without your own challenges though, right?
Yeah. I think our inconsistency. Well, saying that, inconsistency is probably the wrong word to use after a ridiculous run of results over 12 games. But I'm not going to say the wheels have come off, but the last 2 games have been not our best. And obviously, as you touch on, we've just lost our captain due to suspension after a red card against Bristol Rovers on Saturday, which doesn't help. But we look to overcome these tests and adversities, don't we? So,
well, we've been in a similar situation, but ours seems to have been over the last 2 months. We got our first win against Cheltenham on Saturday. Yeah. More by luck than perhaps judgment, you'd argue, but a win is a win, and no one's going to look back and think, well, you didn't take any points off bottom of the league Cheltenham, but we did. We took all 3 points. It doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things how they come. It just matters that you get them. You can pick the bones out of anything and how imperfect things are or how good something is. The bottom line is at the end of the season, you're going to look back and see where you are in the table and how many points you've managed to accumulate and how many wins. The individual results and the total sum of all the parts, that's really what you're going to focus on. We hadn't won in the league for a couple of months. We've been battered by injury after injury after injury, suspension, red card. Brandon Cooper got sent off for a stupid elbow a couple of weeks ago. So he's one of our first choice centre-backs. We now welcome back experienced captain Omar Beckles. So we've got a little bit of experience in our team. We're starting to, I think Rich is now tried and he'll never put his best team out because we've got a long-term absentee in Jordan Graham. Our other, we have high expectations for Dan Ajay, sorry. He's only just started to make a comeback because he injured himself in pre-season. So for us, we've not been able to play our first choice. We started the season off with about 8 first choice players out injured. So we never got that running start that most other clubs did. I don't know how this is going to go. I mean, obviously both sides would be expecting their teams to at least get something from this game, I would imagine.
Absolutely. It sounds like a relatively similar story to ours in terms of injuries and frustrating, perhaps performances, but in terms of results, I think what you said, I think a lot of our fans can resonate with that. You know, although the performances might not have been there, like you mentioned against the game against Cheltenham, I think we can share that and look back on a few games where we've not been 10 out of 10, but we've come away from with 3 points. So on that note, we will get stuck in and look at both teams' seasons so far. So, after a pretty good run, the Wanderers currently in an all right spot. I think, in the grand scheme of things, if you'd have asked us if we would be happy with where we are at the start of the season, come Christmas, I think most of us would have said yes. Obviously, the last 2 games have been a little bit of a dip, but I think we've seen it before, and we're confident that the turnaround in form will come. Perhaps just a matter of when, and I think for all of us, we hope that Saturday will be that game.
I'll swap with you. If you want to swap places with me, I'm happy to swap places. I'll take your form, I'll take your points tally, and I'll take your league position. No problem.
Hey, we're a place below Stevenage. I wouldn't have taken that before the start of the season. If somebody had said that, they've had an unbelievable season, haven't they? But
almost unexplainable, you'd argue, given their budget relative to others in the league. There's something. I mean, obviously, we came up with Stevenage. We came up as League Two champions last season, and Stevenage were hot on our tail all season. That's a bit of a freak situation. The big question is can they maintain that for a whole season?
Isn't it? Yeah. We're only not even halfway through yet, so it's a big ask.
Yeah, Boxing Day's the halfway point for us. So. Look, and sorry, I know you've got something else to move on to, but I think just to say that I think we'd have taken where we are now at the beginning of the season. If we end up in 14th, I'd be quite happy with that come the end of the season. That would be progress on last season for
solid,
us, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, look, it's not spectacular. We've had a troubled start to the season. We keep losing players, and consistency of being able to name a team, which Steve Evans probably can do. I'm not really well read on what they've been up to, but he's just figured it out. He's got the players that he knows how to play in a slightly awkward way, whereas Richie Wellens, our manager, likes to play more fluent football through the phases, through the teams.
He's very Everett-like in that respect, isn't he? Playing out from the back and being confident. Some would say stuck with his methodology and such like, but I agree with it. If that's the way you're going to play, then play it.
Yeah, and you've got the budget to get those sorts of players that can play that way in. We're at the smaller end of the scale, not the smallest by any means, but we're at the smaller end of the scale. And, we've done our best. We think we've got a young, talented squad. But it's a learning curve. We can't afford to go out and get experienced young pros, if you like. And we don't have lots of academy products. We have a few, don't get me wrong. We've done very well recently and made good money from selling on. But, you're in a much stronger position in terms of squad and who's on your doorstep and the ability to attract the right sort of players and the right to pay them the right sort of money is. London's expensive and that's another thing where we can't compete with your salary and the cost of living.
Of course, yeah.
All adds up.
It's a good point, guys. I've never ever thought about football in that way. That obviously clubs in and around the London area will obviously have a higher rental.
Yeah. You think if it's us or Stevenage, for example, forget the league position at the moment, or we'd argue that we're a bigger club than Stevenage. But if you're being offered the same money to go to play for Stevenage or Leyton Orient, but you can, it then comes down to obviously particulars about the club and the salary that's not. But let's say the package is exactly the same, but it's cheaper to live in Stevenage than it is to live in London and the surrounding area.
You're closer to Watford, aren't you?
No, we're more West Ham.
I mean Stevenage. Stevenage
that's
in Hertfordshire as opposed to central London, isn't it? So it's
out. It's in Hertfordshire. Yeah, absolutely. So it makes a massive difference. There are outlying areas around that where the training ground might be. That basically means it's just cheaper to rent or to buy up there, to live up there, basically.
It's a good point. Like Ben said, it's not something you take into consideration, and you just want the players in, don't you? And that's it. You just kind of focused on that, on what benefits the club as opposed to the bigger picture, and it's not always the case. So no, it's a good point.
But like Exeter as well, you'd argue, an Exeter City, similar sized club, regardless of where they're at in the table, if you've got two offers, they're exactly the same. Your money's going to go further at Exeter than it is perhaps
exactly.
in London.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
it's a great point. No, it's okay. It's really, really interesting, actually. Paul, just run us through Leyton Orient's season then so far. Obviously,
sure.
you mentioned the last 2 months might have been a little bit difficult, but run us from sort of day one up to where we are now. How do you think Orient have got on, and are you happy with how things have gone?
I mean, you can always pick the bones out of anything. We didn't start this league particularly well. We lost 1-0 at home to Charlton. Away at Charlton, I beg your pardon. Obviously, first game of the season, you always want to get off to a winning start. We didn't do that. And then we lost to Plymouth Argyle, seemed to be a cup foe of ours that we always lose. We always seem to get drawn against Plymouth and we always get drawn away and we always seem to lose. So that was a given. We knew that and we were prepared for that already. But then we got smashed at home by Portsmouth 4-0. And then we lost 3-2 away at Wycombe, which was a very tight game. And then we started to pick ourselves up with a draw against Blackpool and a win against Cambridge. And then we lost at home 3-0 to Stevenage. And there was some warning signs. There's a lot of alarm bells ringing. But like I said earlier, we started off with about 8 or 9 players out, first choice players out injured, muscular strains. Dan Ajay broke his leg. And we had other players who were just not available for muscle strains and sprains and all sorts of stuff. So Richie wasn't really able to ever get that kind of rhythm of what he was trying to practice in pre-season out and actually on the pitch. We did well in terms of retaining most of who we wanted from last season. We lost Lawrence Vigouroux, who went to Burnley, obviously just up the road from you. Couldn't deny him that. He's not first choice. I don't even think it's third choice, which is a shame because he's great talent. But look, financially, it makes sense for him and his family to secure their future. So don't begrudge him that. And Paul Smith was our talismanic winger when he was fit. He was a game-changing player. He's now doing reasonably well, I think, at QPR. When he plays. So from that point of view, we'd lost 2 crucial components of our promotion-winning side, but they were replaced with Dan Ajay, who unfortunately got injured. That was meant to be. And we got Solbrin in on loan, a young goalkeeper in on loan from Middlesbrough, who proved his worth playing in goal for Swindon last season, did very well. So, 2 capable, ideal replacements, you'd argue, but things just never started with us really well. And we never got our flow and it was difficult. And, when you've lost your first few games of the season, you kind of think, the mood in the dressing room could take a dip and the attitude of the players, you hope it's right, but you're talking about a young but talented squad, but it's new to them, so they're trying to figure out how to feel and how to overcome these challenges they probably haven't had before. So it's very difficult. But Richie is a good manager, he's a good motivator, a good man manager, we believe, and we started to then pick up points. We went to Exeter away at the beginning of September and beat them, and drew with Peterborough, who, big budget, big club for this league, been in the Championship a fair bit. So to take something from Peterborough was genuinely brilliant. And then we beat Fulham under 21s in the EFL Trophy to stay in the Football League Trophy to stay in that. And then we beat Shrewsbury at home, lost to Fleetwood in a bit of an ill-tempered game, and then we beat Reading at home, Carlisle away, and then we started to pick up some points, and we started to pull ourselves away from that kind of, I can't believe I'm saying this out now, but the relegation zone. Talking about it this early in the season, relegation was a word that was being used amongst the Orient fan base, but you don't really start to look at the table, do you really, until you've done at least a quarter of the season. I mean, that's not sensible, even a third of the season, realistically. You take no notice of it, but it's starting to take some sort of shape now.
I think it's different, Paul, as well, especially when you've just been promoted. I think your perspective on it is slightly different.
Well, it's really funny you say that. Yeah, it's really funny you say that, because on our podcast, this last show, episode 340, my friend Steve was saying about where has the expectations of Leyton Orient fans suddenly, for us to be top 5, top 8, by expectation, we deserve to be there. Where does that come from? There seems to be some sort of delusions of grandeur amongst some of the fan base. Perhaps it is just a noisy minority, thinking that we're bigger than we are. And we should be higher up the league than we are, but we are where we are because over 21 odd games, this is where we are, and the league table doesn't lie.
No.
The problem that we've got is that doing a weekly podcast and a weekly show, as you will well know, you look at things in isolation. You don't sit back after, you don't do a podcast every 10 games and go, right, okay, over that 10 games, we've accumulated 25 points, blah, blah, or whatever it is. And you look at things holistically. No, you look at things piecemeal. And I think that's probably a lot of the problem. And that's probably a lot of where some of this the frustration and annoyance is that we've not played as well as what we know that we should be able to and can play because of the talent in our squad. Sloppy passing, lack of movement, backwards, sideways, high possession, but never test the goalkeeper. It's like, well, what's the point? You may as well, I'd rather have 20% possession but have 8 shots on target and score 2 goals.
Yeah,
rather than
3 points. Yeah.
Than 80% possession, but it looked nice and get 1 point or no points.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Sorry if I'm stating I apologise to you and all of your listeners if I'm stating the glaringly obvious, but I think sometimes
you know what, Paul? You know what? It's one of the reasons why we do this, and we're quite young. We've only been a podcast for a year.
Okay.
And I think sometimes another person's glaringly obvious is a different person's bit of a light bulb moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it is about perspective. I think what you just said there is bang on. You look at it game by game and you do become very reactionary, and your expectations are always higher. Whereas the reality, and you mentioned it right from the get-go, you'd swap places in a heartbeat. Also saying, where's this expectation coming from? You do have to have a bit of context around stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you've said that.
Sorry, it's different for us to you though, because the expectation, being the size of club that you are, your expectation, rightly so, this season would be promotion.
Completely. And
our expectation is to stay in the league.
And you can still hear the rattling of the P in the referee's whistle from the playoff second leg against Barnsley, and we're already saying we ain't going through that again. It's going to be automatics next season, and that's from our hierarchy, not from us supporters. And that does set the tone, and it does set the expectation. But you look at results, you look at performances, and you should, if you're logical and sensible enough, be able to paint your own picture of where things should be and where we're going to end up and what we should be doing, as opposed to basing that on expectations that have been set by a manager or whoever it might be. So you're right in what you're saying. I agree with you completely.
Cool.
It is. It's a really interesting point, especially when you consider the last 2 games that we've had and the conversations that we've had on the podcast. You would have thought things were going much, much worse than they are. If we win our game in hand, we're 6 points from top and we're second in the league in an automatic spot.
You take that all day long.
Of course you would.
You would, absolutely.
Automatic out the league. Don't have to worry about champions. Like, that's just a cherry on the top. But just to get out. And for us last season, when we won League 2, would have taken top 4 really, or top 7 as it was. But the fact that we were top for most of the season, it was like an unbelievable season.
Yeah, it's nice to get a trophy in the cabinet, isn't it? But with respect, you look at it and you think about. I mean, I think about last season, and from time to time, it might be my age, but I sometimes forget. Was it Plymouth or was it Ipswich who won the title? The reality is, it doesn't really matter as long as you get out in the automatics.
Yeah.
Then that's all that counts.
Yeah, absolutely. That's right. Getting out the league, absolutely, totally agree. I can see some good points in the chat as well.
Yeah, I'd settle for second all day long. I'd take that absolutely right now.
Of course you would.
Absolutely. We've had some comments in, so we'll run through them. Liam's asked, are Leyton Orient not at their level though? So realistically, where do you think as a club Leyton Orient sit at the minute? Do you think that they're sort of at the right level?
Yeah, as it stands at the moment, I think we're at where we're meant to be at. I think just for context here, we were in League One last time, 2014-15, and then we got relegated into League Two. That was when our disastrous owner took over. So Barry Hearn owned the club. He then sold it to someone else. We don't mention his name. He owned the club, sunk it to the ground. We got relegated to the National League. And then obviously we've had 2 promotions in 6 years, which is probably another way of where our expectations have come from. Is in 6 years we've won the National League as the champions, and we've won League Two as champions, obviously most recently. So we've got 2 trophies in the trophy cabinet, which most clubs won't have. I mean, arguably, would you want to swap our history for yours? You probably wouldn't, but we're at where we're at, and this is what we're doing. We're a mid-table club at the moment, but we are planning on growing on that. But you can't just turn up to a league and suddenly find some rich person that's got hundreds of millions to just throw it. There's rules and laws around how you spend it and what you can and can't do. And we've had a guy who came in with very, very deep pockets, allegedly, and who was going to take us to the next level. And it's going to be amazing and wonderful. Just be careful what you wish for. Because it didn't work out that way. We ended up out of the Football League for the first time in 100 or whatever years. So we are at the level that we're at. We are here where we're meant to be. We're back, I guess, where we belong.
It's ironic, isn't it? Because you're saying about swapping places and what our expectations are. I'll be truthful. It was only earlier today doing the research that it came back to me that obviously you were in the predicament that you were in 6 years ago. It was a winding up petition.
Yeah.
And again, I was saying to Ben before we came on, Paul, it's like, again, we had Exeter, the guys from Exeter City on a couple of weeks ago. And obviously they've had their issues. You've had your issues. We've had our issues even more recently. We were 30 minutes away from death.
Same.
And there's a bit of a thing with our supporters, and I do agree with it that there'll be an argument about something or another, recent results or form or whatever, and then somebody will come out with the comment, but at least we've still got a club, and it's like it's a taboo. You can't say that. It's like
that's expectation for you. Yeah, because we've gone through the last couple of months and it's been tough because we've watched our team not do very well, not play very well, knowing that there is ability there. And we don't know what. I said a month and a half ago, there's something not quite right. Something's wrong. Whether the players aren't fit enough, whether the players are carrying knocks, whether they don't understand what their roles are, whether Richie Wellens is overcomplicated things because he's a real meticulous planner and a real tacticianer, and whether he's just confusing. I mean, he screams a whole 90 minutes. How he does post-match without a throat lozenge, I don't know, but he just manages to scream the whole time. You can hear him if you sit behind the dugout at home or any game. It's just been that sort of a challenge. I completely lost my train of thought where I was going with that, so I'll stop waffling. Sorry, chaps. I was going to make a point, but completely forgot where I was going.
No, it happens to the best of us.
No, don't worry about that. We're always doing it.
We will just touch on some injury updates. I don't think the Wanderers have been in such poor fortune, but we'll find out from Leyton Orient in just a second.
And sorry about that graphic, Paul. Kermit the Frog. Why?
It's quite, I don't know what everyone's issue is with it. Obviously, the biggest miss for Wanderers will be Ricardo Santos missing the game through suspension. Josh Sheehan will be back and available after missing a game after he picked up the maximum amount of yellow cards. So I think, as far as I know, that's it. Is the forgotten Zach Ashworth? Is he?
Oh, he's back.
Is he kicking around?
He's fully fit. Obviously, you've got to take into consideration the long-term Unlundaloo injury and obviously Jono. But other than that, we had a similar sort of challenge to yourself, Paul, not many weeks ago, where we had 8 first teamers injured from a squad of 18. It was a nightmare. Youth team on the bench, etc. So even with our, like you say, you talk about, the sort of higher echelons of the budgets in this league, we were still absolutely down to the bare bones. I think as well, I think Liam in the chat's just mentioned Jon Daddy Bodvarsson took a knock in the game in the defeat against Bristol Rovers on Saturday. Ian Ebbert's come out and said that it was more of an impact injury as opposed to anything muscular or anything tendon related or twisted or anything like that. So he may not be risked. I feel that probably Ebbert, given the introduction of Bodvarsson in the last 2 games, and we've lost both, not to go with a knee-jerk reaction, but may return to a partnership of Charles and Adebayo anyway. But either way, I think it's out, of course.
You've got our former youth product, Victor Adebayo.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I forgot about that. Yeah, he was really good. We sold him, I think, to Victor Adebayo. Did he go to Norwich? Did he leave us and go to Norwich? I can't remember now. Yeah, I should have probably researched that and sounded a little bit more knowledgeable.
No, not at all. No.
But Victor Adebayo came through our academy. Yeah.
Wow. Was he with you long? Was he with the academy long? Do you know?
Not without Googling it.
No, Google away. I think the only correlation that we found is obviously old Darren Pratley.
Darren, yeah, of course.
Yeah, is he back in first team contention now, Paul?
He is, yeah. He started last week, actually. I think where Richie had tried a pretty young squad. I think he brought back George Moncur, he brought back in Darren Pratley, Omar Beckles, because we lost Brandon Cooper to suspension. So we had 3 more senior pros out there versus the slightly more younger and youthful squad. But no, Victor started his career with us. He was one of the young hot prospects that we sold during the previous regime, if you like, yeah. And then he went to and joined Barnsley. Quite a hot prospect, actually.
I think we've got one of your representatives in the chat, Sharky. Yeah, we sold him to Barnsley.
Well played, Sharky. So, yeah, well played.
And then we picked him up from Burton for what
Good
was
player.
a massive £500,000.
Oh wow.
Yeah. He's how best to put this? I'm not going to use the old Marmite obvious analogy. But he does split people. But he's done all right in his first full season thus far. He's done all right so far. He's bagged a few. He causes a lot of problems. He's got a dubious first touch. I think that's what splits people more than anything. But he works his socks off, the lad. He really does. He's a grafter.
Which is what you want. If he's not scoring goals, he's got to be doing something else, right? If he's contributing to the rest of the team,
exactly.
That's acceptable.
It's helped Dion as well. It's helped Dion Charles a lot in terms of his goal tally this season. I don't think people see that. And
that's the problem. You look at your strikers and you think, well, Victor's scored 0, as an example. He scored 0 goals, but this guy's scoring all the goals. So Victor's rubbish and the other guy's brilliant. But actually, if you watch the interlink play, there's always one that will do better than the other if that's how you set your team up. We don't set our team up. Richie doesn't set his team up to have a 20-goal-a-season striker. Last season, we won the league and our highest scoring player was 10 goals.
Right.
Because all of the goals were shared equally amongst the rest of the squad, and we were frugal at the back. We were clinical in both boxes enough that, we shared the goals.
And Bradford had
Yeah, absolutely. And Bradford had the leading striker in Andy What's-his-face for 27 odd goals, but they didn't even win the playoffs. So it's all well and good having a 20-plus goal a season striker, but if the team's not going in the same direction, then you might as well kind of almost not in some ways, which sounds a bit silly. But, what I'm saying is Victor will work hard. He's a hard worker. It's how he's been taught. So he's doing the graft so that your other man can unfortunately do what he needs to do.
Yeah. I think somebody's just mentioned it. Martin's just mentioned it in the chat that if we see a fully fit Dion Charles and a fully fit Yondari Bodvarsson together, it's our best front two option. It clearly is, and we've said it all along on here. However, mixing it up, and we haven't seen a fully fit Bodvarsson for a long time. He only started his first game against Portsmouth last week before. I lost track of time with Christmas, but 2 games ago. And that's a problem, So, there you go.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm waffling again.
So, Paul, just run us through Leyton Orient squad at the minute then. How are we looking in terms of injuries? Is there anyone really, really key missing for you? As you mentioned, the leg break. I mean, in pre-season, we had a similar situation with our George Johnston missing the season after a nasty ACL injury. But who can we expect to see starting at the tough sheet on Saturday?
So Jordan Graham is a big loss for us. He's a huge loss, a winger that we'd signed from Birmingham. He's out for probably for the season, arguably. If he makes it back sooner, great, but we're not expecting him back. Aaron Drinan is our striker as well. Had a mixed season. People get on his back. Although he works really hard, his end product isn't quite there. That's probably more of a confidence issue than an ability issue, I think. Many fans will disagree with me. They're not a big fan of his, but there is a player in there somewhere because when Kenny Jackett signed him in the first half of the season, he was on about 14 goals by Christmas. So there is a player in there if you can service, and when he's fully fit and confident, then there is a player in there. The magic word in there is if, obviously. So there's those two that are out. Ed Turns is on a young lad on loan to a Welsh under-21 captain. Has played for the Welsh under-21 squad. Good player on loan to us from Brighton. Again, he played for us last season, wanted to come back again this season. Obviously now we're a higher league, but also he wanted to come back and play for the club, as did Idris El Mazouni from Ipswich as well. But he's not injured. Ed Turns, I think, failed a late fitness test last week. So I think other than about 2 or 3 players, Adam Thompson's coming back. Not first choice. I think it'll be Omar Beckles, Dan Happy, and probably Tom James as a back 3 with Sol Brennan between the sticks. I think he'll probably keep much of a side that he had last week. But again, it's so difficult to predict because Richie plays his cards very close to his chest and doesn't really give updates on sort of injured players or who we might expect. I think, and that's very clever, because obviously he doesn't want to give opposition teams any kind of inkling as to who might play and what formation he may play them in or what their setup is going to be. But I suspect that it will be probably George Monk, Idris El Mazouni, Darren Pratley, Jordan Brown played at right back. Tom James didn't start, I beg your pardon. It was Jordan Brown, Omar Beckles, Ed Turns, Omar Beckles, Dan Happy, and who went in at left back? I can't remember for the life of me. So he then went with Darren Pratley, Idris El Mazouni as a sort of 2 in front of the back 4, and then we had George Moncur, Dan Ajayi, and Theo Archibald as a 3, playing behind Ruel Sotiriou, who has done well. Admittedly, he's done well, but he's missed more chances that could have probably really put him comfortably in double figures this season. He should be on 12, 13 goals this season. We started off with Brown, Beckles, Happy, and Hunt. Rob Hunt started as left back. That's right. So back 4, which is what I think we're better off doing rather than a back 3 with wing backs. We've played a 5-3-2 or 3-5-2, whichever kind of way your brain sees that. But going to a flat back 4, I think, has helped give us the structure and stability that we need. especially as we're slightly younger and not used to this level yet. I know we're 20 odd games in, but some of them haven't played at this level before. So there's a bit of an adjusting period, but we still have a strong bench and potentially game changing players that can do stuff off the bench if need be, as was the case last Saturday where we stole all 3 points off Cheltenham. And it was a steal. And I feel for Cheltenham because they played well with 10 men for 80 minutes.
They'd had a decent run of results prior to playing you guys as well, didn't they? They started to see a bit of a new manager
in form.
Yeah,
precisely.
But what was it? An 89th minute own goal and a 93rd minute winner away. Yeah. Take everything out of the equation. If that was us, I'd be absolutely over the moon. I wouldn't give a monkey's how we got it.
No,
if we got that, I'd chuffed ours.
That's what I said at the start of the show, wasn't it? It's not about how you win, it's just about getting all 3 points. Yes, we'd all love to be playing Man City style football, passing people off the pitch. Everyone would love to see that. You've got to be realistic. We haven't got those players. We've got these players. It doesn't work that way. You've got to have a sense of realism. Even at a big club like yours, should you be in this league? Realistically, no. But you are, theoretically, no. Theoretically, no. But realistically, because you are where you are.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to cut your cloth accordingly. But you can probably get the sorts of players that your manager wants to play the style that he wants. We have to be a bit careful. We have to manage our budget a little bit differently. It's a much smaller budget.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That said, the watchword has always been sustainability. With Everett, you as a Bolton fan, you get tired of hearing it because you do want.
But you have to.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Have to. Look where overspending gets you. You nearly lost your club. Would you rather be stable and steady or going gung home, but maybe every year not having a club to support?
Yeah,
I know.
I think it's only last year. Will it be, Ben, that we first started actually spending
money,
actually being involved with transfer fees? Prior to that, it was like years and years.
But there's some fallacy that says, in my opinion, that says if you're spending money on transfers, then they're better than players that aren't. I don't believe that to be true in the low league. Maybe at the top end of the championship and maybe the championship period and the Premier League for sure. But you don't need to do that at League One, League Two level, in my opinion, because there are plenty of players that become available, didn't work out at a certain club, didn't take to a certain manager, didn't play them in a certain way. Doesn't suddenly mean they're a crap player. No. So I don't think we don't have an association, or I don't. Let me not speak for all Leyton Orient fans, but I don't have an association with paying a transfer fee for a player equals that's a good player.
No.
That player is better than a free transfer. For me, it doesn't work like that. All you're doing for me is buying them out the contract.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
There's probably more risk involved than anything else, isn't there?
Of course. Absolutely. Because you're laying out lumps of money over the course of a contract. But regardless.
We actually had a question about another player who's associated with both clubs, which was Kieran Sadlier, who was with you last season. Yeah, he's since left us. He's gone on to Wickham, but with well wishes. A lot of Bolton fans really rated him. Good player. Do you know the whys and the wherefores as to why that didn't happen with you guys? Why he didn't stay on with you guys?
I don't know is the honest answer to that. I suspect he probably wanted to try and cut his cloth back with you guys and then got maybe told, because he was only on loan to us and he did help us. I mean, I think at times he flattered to deceive. I think that he was good in spells, and I think at times he wasn't as good as what I hoped he would be and deliver as much as what he did. But by the same token, caveating that, we lost Paul Smith, our talismanic player. It wasn't really that noticed that Paul Smith was lost because Kieran did contribute in games that he needed to. So
okay.
I temper my kind of frustration that you expect him because he's come from a bigger club and he's a better player, that suddenly he's going to be like this magic and suddenly we're going to shoot and score hundreds of goals in each game. And that wasn't the case. So I guess I probably need to wind my neck in a little bit there because, like I say, he didn't he made us not miss Paul Smith that as much as what we probably would have done if we didn't get a Kieran Sadlier in. But again, I guess we've probably used our budget up and maybe had eyes on different players.
Yeah.
Because he's gone to Wickham, and they're only around the M25. So, they're not a million miles away.
True. Yeah. Fair point. No.
Well,
Appreciate
it's been a great episode. Thank you very much, Paul, for that. We've really, really enjoyed it, and we hope you watching along at home have enjoyed too. I think that just about wraps up tonight's episode, though. So thank you all for watching along. We would massively appreciate it if you could drop us a follow on wherever you're watching. If you're watching on YouTube, then if you could subscribe, that would be a massive help. You can find Orient Outlook on Twitter in the description on the YouTube video below. Just go and have a nosy, see what they're about. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.